are okay. We are live. And yes, we are we are live. Yes. Let me here we go. Okay. All right. Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Live, uh, the Laughter for All podcast. I'm Comedian Nazareth, and this is episode number 42. And my guest today, I'm very excited to introduce him. He's a friend of mine. We met a couple years ago in Maui, Hawaii, doing an increase conference, and I learned so much from this man. We became friends, and last March, right before everything shut down, we were able to spend time. And I'll tell you what, if you watch my Live with Nash show, I remember when we first started show, the first advice I gave you came from Dr. Mark Sherwood about what to do to, to prevent yourself from getting sick. For all the, and we'll ask the same question again, using the silver collide, the magnesium, the 2K, all that. That was the man that gave me the best advice. And guess what? I haven't had a cold or sniffles or anything yet. So let me introduce him officially. He's a naturopathic doctor. He's on a mission to help you achieve wellness in every area of your life. The naturopathy is a system of treatment of disease that avoids drugs and surgery and emphasizes the use of natural agents such as air, water, and herbs, and physical means such as tissue manipulation and electrotherapy. Dr. Mark and his wife, Dr. Michelle and Sherwood, has a successful medical practice, the Functional Medical Institute, also a TV and a radio program, as well as provide resources including their Amazon bestseller, The Quest for Wellness, nutrition plans, fitness instructional videos, and helpful mental and emotional steps to provide relief from stress and to help people form better habits so they can live better. He's a former Oklahoma State and regional bodybuilder champion, ex-professional baseball player, and a 24-year-old retired veteran of the Tulsa Police Department, where he logged a decade of courageous services on the department's SWAT team. So welcome, welcome, Dr. Mark. Thank you for taking the time. I can imagine how busy you are. But thank you for being with us.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure, man. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for the awesome opportunity to be with you today. I am absolutely honored, grateful, and thankful.
So how is Tulsa, Oklahoma today?
It is hot and humid, which is kind of matching Southern California, I understand.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, you were born, then what happened? You were
Well,
born where?
then I grew up. No, I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and interestingly enough, I was adopted. So a really cool thing, I was adopted as a young boy. I'm not sure of the age, but my parents adopted me. They raised me, and I was really raised in church. But I gave my life to the Lord, and when I was 8 years old, and it was a life-changing moment for me. And, I think growing up in a, quasi-Christian environment, it helped me and shielded me from some stuff. But at the same time, as I grew up and became a man, I was exposed to a lot of stuff that I didn't really ever think I would see with being police officer and things of that nature.
Wow. So you're a bodybuilder, a police officer, and a doctor.
Yes, sir.
What scares you?
Nothing. Honestly, I'm not scared. I'm not because when you I say when you stare at the wrong end of a 45, you don't really worry about too much, and so I'm able to come at people in here and say, man, come on, man, don't tell me you're scared to death because you don't know anything about that. And ultimately, we have to begin to live life. You can't live life, Nazareth, if fear has its hooks in you. So fear will prevent you from living life. And so I think that that's the most egregious, probably, pandemic we have right now is this thing called fear because it's preventing the fullness of life. And I really believe that with my fullest intention.
Wow. Now, when we first met in no last year in March, no, early this 2020,
Yes.
BC before coronavirus.
Yeah, no
That
doubt.
my wife came up with that, like before Christ, it's before coronavirus. We were in Maui, and I asked her the question right before me getting on the plane. I said, "What do I need to protect myself from the coronavirus immune?" And I'll let you answer it again or give us the answer because people are scared.
Well, first of all, I think the first thing to do is eliminate the concept of fear, because our bodies are made fearfully and wonderfully by the Creator to fend off viruses. The coronavirus is nothing new, Nazareth. It's a form of something that's been around a while, and really to understand that viruses were here before BC, and even they'll be here next year. We're going to be facing these viruses, and our body has a really cool system called the immune system. And there's an innate immune system and an adaptive immune system. The innate system is what we're born with or what we acquire. The adapting one is what we sort of develop into as we're exposed to certain things. Now, with that said, it's very important to understand that the body has to have certain things that are necessities for it, or we should say essential for its system to operate. The immune system is no different. It requires all of our mechanisms to be in place. And some of the mechanisms we need, obviously, we need a healthy diet. We need to avoid the inflammatory foods and bring in what I call life-giving foods. And I'll be glad to give kind of a list of that if you like.
Yes, please. What's an
So
inflammatory food?
inflammatory foods are as follows, and I really hope people can, take down a pen, pencil, and jot this down. Inflammatory foods are going to be as follows: sugars, artificial sweeteners, sodas, processed foods, fried foods, MSG, monosodium glutamate. We also have to throw in the category of these breads and grains. That's a big issue, but those are inflammatory in their current construct. Soy, most likely, corn, most likely at this point, and then dairies. So if we can eliminate the inflammatory foods, our system then will maintain a better response from an immune inflammatory cascade to go fight what is coming at us. When we look at these non-inflammatory foods, or let's call them life-giving foods, it's clear. We want to have fruits and vegetables and good fats, good quality fats like avocados, olive oil, etc., and good protein selected from good quality protein sources. Again, you don't need to do diet, but if anyone's listening can pull those first things out of your plan and put the latter things into your plan, you will do better. Now, with that said, there's always things that we need on top of that because our nutrition is inadequate today. Hence, soil has not been allowed to rest. And of course, we have, the degradation of vitamins and minerals within our food supply. And so we need vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical for immune function and bone building. Go figure. So vitamin D with vitamin K, we want to have about 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, at least, if not 10,000 IUs of vitamin D, with about 100 micrograms of vitamin K2. Okay, now that's very important. If you have lighter skin tone, unlike you and I, Nazareth, a little bit darker skin tone, lighter skin tone requires less vitamin D. So you might be more than 5,000 IU. Darker skin tone requires more vitamin D because we don't synthesize it well from the UVB rays of the sun. We also need vitamin C. Vitamin C is a big deal. So 2,500 milligrams twice a day would be an adequate dose. I think you mentioned silver. Colloidal silver is great. You can take that spray. You can get it liquid, but it's really good because it becomes antiviral. Zinc is excellent too. 20 milligrams for ladies, 40 milligrams for men. You could look at also omega-3 fatty acids. Now, these are essential, and I want people to not leave these out because we tend to look at these things as we're going to eat fish and eat salmon and get enough. That's just not true. I've tested thousands of people around this world and have found exactly this many people that have been efficient with that. This many,
With the
zero.
omega-3.
That's right. We're
Yeah.
all deficient. So we need at least 3 to 4 grams of EPA and DHA. Again, that's EPA and DHA from about a 3 to 2 ratio of EPA over DHA. And it needs to be that full gamut of that whole 3 grams or 4 grams of omega-3 fatty acids.
So how can someone like me who's a layperson ADD be able to get those average together? And does Costco stuff work? Do I buy them from, I have to go to a specialty like C&G or someone? What's a good vitamins
Well,
like
first of all,
source?
going to the stuff that's available just over the counter is for the most part extremely suboptimal, if not inadequate, completely altogether. You need to look at
Ah,
something that's sort of a professional line. So what that would look like is on the bottle, you will see a stamp of approval based upon levels of quality they must maintain. Typically, something should be labeled GMP, GMP. And
huh.
it's really interesting because I get sent emails a lot of times going to say, "Hey, Mark, can you look at my supplement list?" And I'm like amazed at the garbage that's out here that's got nothing in it, and people are just they're floored by when I say, "Well, this is not even quality." They're like, "Well, but it was at GNC, or it was at Costco, and it was only $4.99." Well, you kind of get what you pay for. So
Mm.
high quality sources are critically important, and I would suggest find a functional medicine practitioner, and of course we can help too. I mean, we see people all around the world anyway, but find someone you can ask these questions to and say, look at this or look at that, and let somebody make specific recommendations to ensure you get the quality that's needed to help your system fight appropriately.
What about people who don't have a lot of money? I mean, like, because sometimes these things are expensive and they go, well, I really need it. But then
Yep.
again, what do
Well,
you?
I think that there's a study that was out several years ago. I use this term intentionally. There's a myth, MYTH, that goes around that says eating healthy or being healthy is too expensive. That's just not true. It's how you frame this. In actuality, there was a study done, and I'm paraphrasing this heavily, but in a 5-day window, Monday through Friday, they gave 2 families instructions. One was to go to a fast food restaurant, eat as much as you want, 3 meals a day. The other one was given parameters about what to shop for in the grocery store, 3 meals a day. And then the latter group, they were given instructions to shop for organic foods, right? Only organic foods. So at the end of the week, they totaled up the amount spent, and it was $128 for the organic food. It was $131 for the poor food from the fast food. So again, that one study does not sort of make it all like that, but that gives you an example. I think people need to look at it differently. I mean,
Mm.
we find ways to pay for what we deem to be important. And I think the greatest gift we have truly is the gift of life. And to put that as a minimal standard down here and say, I can't afford that, we're probably setting ourselves up for failure. And I realize people, all of us are different in walks of life and means that we're able to do. But I do know this, and not to be over spiritual, but God wants people to be healthy. I mean, I believe that. And if He wants us to be healthy, He will provide a way. He's not going to provide you a platform of excuse to stand on. He's going to provide a way. And so I think we need to start saying, I have what I need. I'm not going to fear. I'm going to be well. And I'm going to have everything I need from a supplement standpoint as I need it. And I'm not going to fear not having any money to pay for it.
Where do you buy your vitamins? Yours.
Here at our clinic, Dr. Michelle and I really searched the world out, and we have no loyalties to any companies. So we get our vitamins and minerals from generally about 4 different sources. One is called Zymogen, Xymogen.
Uh-huh.
Another one is called Designs for Health. Another one is called Biotics, Biotics. And those are three companies that you can absolutely trust. There are a couple others, but those are great ones, and they've got great sources. I think probably two of those are available on Amazon. But again, you got to watch that too, because when you buy off Amazon, you got to think about where has this thing been stored, temperature,
Uh-huh.
humidity, time, and it could be you always got potential counterfeit out there, expiry date, that kind of thing.
Interesting. I never knew that. That's amazing. Now,
Yep.
what if someone's saying, okay, should I wear my mask? Is a mask already works? What do I need? What other extra things, other what you gave me about the vitamins? What do I need to do to protect myself from the coronavirus?
Well, I think there's a lot of discussion about masks now. Should we wear them? Should we not? I think there is a belief out there that's pretty strong from one side of the community that says masks are beneficial. I think masks can be beneficial if you're sick.
Mm.
As far as a well person being said to wear a mask, I don't find benefit in that personally. It doesn't make a lot of sense because, from the standpoint of a mask, you will compress. If I'm using my hands, you're going to compress the ability to expel or expire carbon dioxide, and further, you're going to breathe it back in. We don't live on breathing carbon dioxide, we live on breathing oxygen. Oxygen, and I want everybody to hear this, is required for the body to manufacture ATP, which is energy. Energy is required for your immune system to use to fight. So, in effect, you can be suppressing potentially an immune system by doing that. And I'm not saying that if you're sick, you should not wear a mask. If you're sick, certainly avoid contact with people, avoid things that can make it worse. And again, you might even think about staying away from people, but that's for your good and their good. But for someone that's healthy, for us to say we need to be wearing a mask, I do not see that personally. And I know people may differ in opinion. That's very fine. People have access to that. I
Uh-huh.
don't see it personally beneficial. I think the most beneficial things can do is this: wash your hands, use good, clean sanitation, don't sneeze on people. When you sneeze, don't sneeze into your hand, sneeze into your arm. Use tissue to wipe it off. Don't touch your face a lot. And one thing about masks, I've seen people jiggling those things and fiddling with those things, and you're touching your face. Again, that's how things get from the hands to the mouth. So if you can just kind of do the standard cleanliness things, you're going to be okay. I don't think, Nazareth, it's a point at this, and I think it's a good consideration point. Since viruses are going to be around, you're not going to be able to suppress the virus. It's
Mm.
not going to happen. We're trying to wait on a vaccine, but vaccines don't prevent every episode of infection. So for us to try to wait on a vaccine, I mean, this is a redundant thing that's going to go on and on and on. Every time something new comes up, we're going to lock everything down, put on a mask on, and wait for vaccine. But eventually, and I even recently asked the Lord, should we be wearing a mask? And I really want to know. And again, not to be over spiritual, but he clearly said to me this. He said, don't fear anything that I've created. And I had to get my mind around that one and go, what? Did you create the virus? But then again, Nazareth, this virus, and this is deep, but I hope I gets this, it
Mm.
exposed the weakened immune system of our population. I'm glad it did, because it gives us a chance to get well and get help, man. I mean, this is good
Right.
information. So it's a different way to look at it.
That's awesome. So now we have a lot of people who are, what do you call it? They're very anxious. They're very, it gets to a point of depression.
Mm,
Now, when people are in that stage, they always recommend like Lexapro or Xan, all these medication.
yep.
What is the if someone comes to your institute, how do you treat that anxiety? How let's start with anxiety. How do you treat anxiety?
Well, obviously, there's a big component with anxiety and fatigue. They kind of go hand in hand, like depression. About 75% of all doctor visits across the United States at current have some component of fatigue or depression with them. Furthermore, 1 in 4 Americans right now are said to be on an antidepressant of some sort. I can guarantee you this, that we weren't born with Lexapro, Paxil, or Wellbutrin, or Prozac deficiency. That's just not true. With that said, we've got to get the idea that anxiety, fear, depression, those are abnormal responses to life's occurrences. Most of the time, and again, I use that intentionally, that we're not medication deficient. We are vitamin and mineral deficient. For example, the creation of neurotransmitters like serotonin that makes you not depressed, and like dopamine that makes you feel good. Like when you get laughter, you get a dopamine surge. You make me have a dopamine overage, sir. It's good.
That's
But
a great compliment. Nobody ever shared that with me in that way, but thank you, doctor.
They can call you my dope dealer. I don't know.
My dope dealer. Yeah,
Yeah,
dopamine.
it's good. But the neurotransmitters are made from amino acids. Amino acids are taken in from the food. And so if we eat poorly and don't get amino acids, we're not going to develop neurotransmitters. If we don't get enough B vitamins and magnesium from our food, we're not going to make the amino acids become neurotransmitters. So it's all really about nutrition, isn't it? So someone dealing with anxiety, I'm going to get them to sleep. I'm going to get them to get out and get some sunshine. I'm going to have them get some activity. I'm going to clean up their nutrition. And I'm going to give them some positive affirmations to say. In other words, never say again that I am depressed. Never say again that I am diabetic or I am heart disease. I am living a life conducive with normal mood patterns, or I'm living a life conducive with optimism and faith. See, I've reframed that. And so I'm going to treat that from all different directions. And certainly, here at our clinic, my wife is a doctor of osteopathy. That's a medical doctor. We have medication. If someone's about to jump off of a cliff or something, you throw everything at them because you've got to stop it in an acute manner. So we're not anti-medication. We're just anti-medication when it comes to using medication to perpetually manage disease processes, which is an impossibility based upon the very idea of medicine. Medicine is to treat acute care. We need to treat upstream causes. And like the example you gave from anxiety, I want to know why someone is depressed. What's their home life like? What's their job like? Are they stuck being inside? I mean, is this quarantine driving them nuts? Is it becoming social isolation, which, by the way, is a negative towards all of these processes? Suicides are going up. Divorces are going up. Heart attacks are going up. I mean, we can't isolate from people. We need to give everybody like a virtual hug right now, right?
Now, what do you do to someone who, let's say they had a situation where they became anxious, or they had maybe like a panic attack once, and then the doctor automatically put them on Lexapro. And now when they take it, when they stop one day, they get back to this, like where they're sweating, they're shaking,
Yep.
they feeling, how do you deal with that?
Well, when they come into here, and we've had a lot of people that come on that are on things, you never, ever quit cold turkey, because the medications, if you quit cold turkey, you'll get a rebound effect. I mean, that goes a lot across the line with a lot of these pharmacological interventions. You always want to have a strategy of titration, which means to lower the dose over time. And you have to bring in a replacement. So you might bring in calming things like herbs like ashwagandha that sort of are adaptogenic herbs. You might bring in some magnesium that could calm the system, or some GABA, G-I-B-A. And you bring those in sort of slow over time, and eventually you begin to sort of wean off of that. And that may take you 6 months. It may take you a year. It may take you 3 months. Either way, you need to have a strategy to do that. Without a strategy to doing that, you'll typically have not very good success.
Okay, example, one time I took my daughter to a doctor that she started looking at her and holding her arm and letting it down, and she started to, is this real, or is that a voodoo doctor? Or is she, they don't do that at your practice, do
No,
they?
no, no. We you may be talking about muscle testing and things like that. We don't really do that much. We typically rely on observational data. We rely on what somebody's telling us. I mean, the greatest healing mechanism you can have for anybody is these two things right here.
Mm.
Listen to them talk. What are they saying? Not just with their words, but what are they saying with their heart? Remember, 95% of all communication is nonverbal. A good listener is a good healer.
Mm. So it's not like doctors, because we went to that lady and paid right away. She took like 1,500 immediately, and then she looks and she looks at her and she goes, "Well, I feel this is what we need to do." And
Yeah,
she gave her all these. But I have a question from our listeners. Let's see. We asked the first one, "What's the natural treatment for anxiety?" Somebody sent me this. It said, "I have difficulty with diverticulitis
yeah,
flare-ups," which is the blocking or in the what is the diverticulitis?
yeah. Diverticulitis is anytime, this is good for the listeners, you see the suffix itis, itis. That means inflammation. Okay,
Mhm.
inflammation. So diverticulitis is inflammation of the area in the colon. So you're going to get a lot of bleeding potential, out of the bowels, etc. So bleeding in the stool. What you can do for diverticulitis is as follows. You want to eliminate the nuts and seeds, those rough things that come through the system, seeded fruits and things like that, spicy things that come through and sort of scratch the lining on the way out. That can become a huge problem. Now, diverticulitis, because it does yield some tissue damage, that tissue perforation, which creates the blood, over the time, if that doesn't heal, could that result in more serious issues such as development of even cancers over time? You bet it can. That's why it's not going to a treatment protocol part-time in that. You have to go full-time and eliminate those things. I think as well, increasing fiber from a powder form is wisdom, but you don't want it so tight that you create too much of a constipation effect. So making sure your bowels are fully formed, and not loose and not too hard is really a good thing. And then perhaps some colostrum. I find colostrum is extremely useful towards the healing of the GI system.
Wow. This is amazing. You know all that. Okay. You mentioned something earlier about avoid dairy because dairy is an inflammatory.
Yeah.
What about almond milk and other sources? Are those inflammatory?
Yeah, almond milk, cashew milk, coconut milks, those are all generally considered anti-inflammatory as long as you get them unsweetened. Okay. Remember, don't get them with the sugar added because the sugar becomes inflammatory. Now, I realize that there are those out there that would say that dairy is good, but however, I looked at simple data. We consume more dairy in the United States than any other country in the world, but yet we lead the world in osteoporosis. So my question for you is, how can milk do a body good? It doesn't seem to do that very well. Um,
Uh-huh.
Further, the cows that produce our dairy for the most part are in confined animal feeding operations known as CAFO, CAFO. So the calf is put into a confined area. They are fattened up as fast as possible by eating what? Corn and wheat, inflammatory foods, right? They're given hormones that are going to make them grow, and they're given antibiotics so they won't get sick in this confined area. And then they're kept pregnant 300 days out of the year so they can continue to pour out milk. Now we're getting a fatty product from that we become what we eats. And so you see dairy as, I believe strongly, a key generator to potential carcinogenic activity, as well as perhaps bone loss. So don't believe the hype. That's heavily subsidized, I'm certain, by the government. And we need to avoid things that are causing us problems based on just sheer data. I mean, our health is going in the wrong direction as a country,
Mm.
and we can do better. We're growing sicker people faster than we're growing people, and that ought not be at all.
So, do you eat cheese?
Occasionally, I eat cheese. Now, cheese can be eaten. It's a fermented source of dairy as long as we don't have GI disturbances. Having said that, there's an enzyme that breaks down dairy sugars called lactase. The dairy sugar is called lactose. So lactase breaks down lactose. Approximately 70% of the population genetically lose that lactase enzyme after 2 years old. So it becomes mostly inflammatory for most people. However, if we have a good GI system and we get a good full fat, quality source cheese. We can have a little bit on the salads or whatever, and it probably won't hurt anything.
This is interesting because I always say I'm from the land of milk and honey, but I'm lactose intolerant, so
There you
I can't
go.
I can't drink milk. I drink almond, and I also
Yep.
take the lactate when I eat cheese. So now, someone with a high blood pressure and been on medication for years and years and years on that's what do you call it? The famous
Like
uh,
lisinopril or something
yeah,
like
the
that.
Nuciprel. How can they lower their blood pressure and maybe cut it out?
Well, first of all, you got to go back to what caused hypertension in the first place. It's going to be a vessel stiffening where the vessels, if they dilate properly and get bigger, that means, and get smaller, so they dilate and they contract. That means they don't get too tight when we push blood through there. That means if they can dilate, we don't get pressure increase. But when they can't dilate, they get tight and stiff, pressure would increase. But what causes the stiffness? Believe it or not, the greatest cause of stiffness is the standard American diet. When you
Wow.
eliminate that and bring in the anti-inflammatory foods we talked about, and bring in perhaps some nitric oxide agonist, you can create a little bit of relaxation in the vessels, and that will mitigate many of the blood pressure issues. And we've been very successful here using those modalities to reduce pressure and create a situation where the blood pressure was actually pushing the system's pressure too low, and therefore it forced removal of the blood pressure, which is great.
Now, what is it called? Nitrate oxide?
Nitric oxide. And
Nitric
a good
oxide.
formula for that is that I use, and I've had good success with this. Again, this is not saying take nitric oxide, it will treat blood pressure. This is saying I've used this to increase nitric oxide in the body. It's called Neo 40, NEO 40 Pro. Neo 40 Pro. Now, that's also to understand that nitric oxide is naturally produced in the vessels if we get plenty of green vegetables in. Where those nitrates are converted to nitrite by mouth bacteria. Now, this is key. If you want to have high blood pressure, use mouthwash, because mouthwash kills the mouth bacteria, preventing nitrate to be converted to nitrite. So if you're out there and you have hypertension and you're using mouthwash, that's just making it worse.
Wow.
Yeah. And like you've heard of these antacid pills or omeprazoles, or their formal name is proton pump inhibitors. Those also will drive blood pressure up as well. So there's a couple things that people probably do on a routine basis that are driving the hypertensive epidemic.
You mean the Tums that we take?
Yeah, we can't, I mean, in an acute situation, once in a while, okay, fine. But when you're taking those on a regular basis, Nazareth, we're driving the ability to not produce nitric oxide in the GI system. Therefore, it will create vessel stiffness.
Okay, I have a question from a listener about rheumatoid arthritis. If someone has rheumatoid arthritis, what is the best thing to do to deal with that naturally?
Yeah, RA, as it's known, is an inflammatory condition that is autoimmune. Please know that one autoimmune condition is not one, but all. And I want to say that one more time. Just because we test for one autoimmune condition, it does not mean that's the only thing that the body's attacking. There's just a lot of stuff out there that we probably don't know what it's attacking yet. So one autoimmune condition is all autoimmune conditions. So what do you have to do to fix that? You have to go back and figure out what generally caused that. Most of the time, autoimmunity is driven by what's called leaky gut. Leaky gut. Leaky gut is when the small intestine begins to get permeable or get holes in the junctions that hold the wall and separate the blood from the internal system that we have covered here. And proteins slide through. And then the body sees the proteins, the immune system goes, hey, you don't belong here. And you get these antibodies created that eventually begin to mimic tissues, such as RA. They begin to mimic the joint tissues, and we get this crumpled look, right? So it attacks the joints. Autoimmunity of the thyroid is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We also know there's such a thing as lupus. These are all autoimmune conditions that we see. The treatment is the same. We need to fix the tight junctions, aka fix the leaky gut. We do that by removing the things that caused the leaky gut. The main things that cause leaky gut: sugars, grains, breads, processed food, the standard American diet. Remember, autoimmunity is a relatively new phenomena that has grown exponentially over the last 30 years. Why? Because of our food supply creating the situation where autoimmunity is indeed possible. If you catch it early enough, I have seen those signs and symptoms go down in severity.
What about when you go to the doctor and he checks the blood and he finds this L7, whatever call it, and he goes, "You have rheumatoid because you have this little protein in your blood." Is that
Yeah,
because of leaky gut?
it all comes from the same thing, the same phenomenon. When the body turns on itself, it's said, look, and this is difference of opinion that I have, and I'm entitled to that. I think the body can reverse autoimmunity. I've seen it before. I've seen, for example, thyroid, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis. I've seen that reverse. I've seen people come in here with lupus, fibromyalgia, and right here in this office, and they were on medications. Now they're not. I've seen people in here with Crohn's colitis. Again, that's going to be an autoimmune of the colon. I see them turn it around, and nobody can argue with the testimony. So I think that we've got to believe different. We've got to think different, and we need to search for upstream root causes and let the body do what it does. So again, with all these autoimmune families, the treatment protocol's got to be anti-inflammatory diet, heal the gut, fix the system, and see what the body can do.
Now, what about osteoarthritis? Is that the same thing or
Yeah, now
same
you're
thing?
starting to get it. Anything itis suffix means
Mm.
inflammatory. So it just makes sense. If we can reduce the inflammatory response, I didn't say turn it off. I said reduce it by bringing in anti-inflammatory sort of lifestyle. We absolutely can get mitigation of those itises out there. And I see that all the time. People think I feel better. So I fix the gut. I bring in a high dose of omega-3. I got the vitamin D up there. I'll use some magnesium from time to time, clean up the diet, and people get better.
Do you believe in those what do you call cleansers and to cleanse and how often and what's a good brand or what good thing to
Yeah,
do?
so a lot of times people look at cleanses to cleanse them out or whatever. Unfortunately, most of them are overhyped and underperforming. And what I mean by that is the body, Nazareth, is detoxing 24/7, 365. So we can't look at like I want to do a cleanse to clean up my mess or to clean up my crap. I've lived like hell. I want to clean this up. It's not like that. Just know that when you do a cleanse, it might be a focused time that to get you back in line with what you're supposed to be doing. But the persistent need to have to do a cleanse to clean out crap is not a feasible way to think. We use cleanses here all the time. When a person comes in and they're working on nutritional adjustment, I will do a 2-week cleanse with them just to get them locked into something of an idea where they're thinking about it for 2 weeks. And that's the
Mm.
great way, because if the liver system or our detox system is working well, guess what? Toxins won't get stored. Toxins get stored in fat tissue. Toxins generally have a component with carcinogenic or cancer activity. So I want a system that works well 24/7, 365.
So what about people who had cancer and they're healed, they had the surgery, had the chemo, or people who are afraid to have cancer? What do you recommend for them?
I can't say that I can understand because I haven't been in that position before. I feel for them in the sense that they've had to go through chemotherapy and things that would undoubtedly suppress the immune system, right? So this is going to be these immunocompromised people. But look, I'm not in your shoes if somebody says it to me, but I will say this in full confidence. I know the God we serve. I know he's not about fear. I know he's not about managing disease processes. He's about healing a physical body. And I think a lot of our potential healing is locked into mindset and heart set. What we think, what we say, what we believe with faith. And then we've got to put the actions in. I mean, what are the things that we can do to prevent cancer? The clinic data is pretty clear that we can add a lot of cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage, bok choy. These are all great things that have various cancer-fighting properties, and we can learn to fast more. Fasting is a great way to let the body clean itself up versus
Really?
feasting all
How
the
do
time.
you fast? How would you fast? How do you fast
So
when you fast?
fasting is awesome. So there's multiple ways that we can look at this from the standpoint of long-term fasting, which can be anywhere from 3 or 4 days up to a week. We can look at the fasting mimicking diet, which is out. There's a nice product, I think it's called Prolon. And then there's this short-term intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is pretty much what I do on a daily basis. You got to look at this two different ways. I will compress the time with which I eat food. So, I bring in calories that I'm eating, food, in a 6 to 8 hour window. If I can do that, that means that I'm fasting from 16 to 18 hours, right? I'm in an unfed state. So that would be considered intermittent fast. A good example from a time frame would be like 6 p.m. tonight, which is coming up, I know, on the West Coast in a few hours. 6 p.m., have your dinner. Don't eat again until noon. That would be an 18-hour fast. Now,
Can I go on Pacific time and start on Eastern?
yeah, make it longer that way. They might even go Far East time if they want to.
But that's so you can eat anything in those in that room or between noon and 6 p.m.
Well,
Anything
you don't want
healthy.
to eat
Yeah.
anything, but there has been data, believe it or not, that even if someone's nutritional intake is poor, by compressing the eating window, they've still had more benefits in that. They've still got some benefits. But if you can do two things, if you can compress the eating window and bring in the good foods that I talked to you about from that category, man, I mean, health is going to improve with 100% certainty, no matter who you are, what state you're in.
Okay, here's a question I'm waiting to ask you. What about hair? Can you get your hair back through nutrition?
Actually, there is some studies out there that says that hair can regrow. There's a couple of peptides, PEPTIDES, that I've used with success. One is called GHK copper. GHK copper
Uh-huh.
works really, really well. And another one is BPC 157. So GHK and BPC, sometimes you can combine those peptides, and there's a foam you can put on your head, and sometimes that will stimulate hair growth.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Now, what about the keto diet, the big keto diet? Everybody's doing the keto diet. What do you think of that diet?
If it's done correctly, beneficial. If it's done incorrectly, deadly. The incorrect version is what's typically done. I call this the Americanized version of keto. Leave it to Americans to jack it up. We something is good and we mess it up. We Americanize it, right? What Americanized version of keto would be an example of let me get some sausage, let me get some cheese, and let me make a casserole and just eat that all day long. Eat some eggs and some meat. And I've left out vegetables, haven't I? I've left a lot of those out, left out just a whole host of things. That is not keto. That is just insanity. That never was keto. That doesn't fit the definition. True ketogenic dieting is mostly fats from generally plant sources, nuts, seeds, avocados. It is high vegetable content from above ground, non-root vegetables like leafing plants like spinach and cabbage and kale and that kind of thing. And it has very little protein, believe it or not. So we're talking, 80, 90% ish. Well, maybe say 80% would be from the fats, maybe 10% from the carbohydrates by volume, and maybe 10% protein. Now that absolutely is going to be successful. That's pretty much how I eat. I will eat mostly plants and I eat a little bit of protein, and you can put on muscle like that. You don't need to worry about muscle loss, and you can keep a low body fat, which is great because toxins are stored in the fat tissue.
Now, so are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? Do you eat?
No, I typically I will eat meat. I don't order it from a restaurant. I mean, when I'm eating food and rest, I'm going to typically get fish, and that's just kind of me, like a quasi-pescatarian, but I'm going to increase my vegetables. That's the benefit that I want everybody to take away from. Increase your vegetables when you have a plate of food, just the round plate. 75% needs to be covered with plants, 25% covered with protein. Put the plants on first, the protein on last. The 75-25 ratio will work for everybody all the time. It's a great rule.
Wow. So you mentioned something about like non-root vegetables. You mean the stuff like carrots and onions and stuff? Those are not good, or?
They're good, but just for the most part, Nazareth, things that go below the ground convert to blood sugar faster. Like, for example, the white potato would have a more viable blood sugar conversion than, say, a bowl of kale would have.
Ah,
That's the difference.
that's amazing. You mentioned something like, okay, let's say someone comes to your institute, and you say by looking at their DNA you can
Yeah.
determine what diet and what exercise. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, everybody has a unique genetic code. We're all, as human beings, 99.9% identical. But that 0.1% is utterly fascinating. And so, in all of our, thousands of genes, there are little differences in each one of us. I like to look at the genes as a dam and a river. So, the river is here, and the upstream stuff comes into the dam. The genes are like the dam, they have to deal with this upstream stuff from our environment, from what we're doing, and they have to make a decision based upon what's coming in, how much water to let out. So we typically blame the genes or the dam on the flood downstream, which is disease processes. So when the floodwaters come up, we're going to throw a sandbag at it, which is quasi pill, right? It doesn't fix
Mm.
the problem, but it might be necessary for a short amount of time. If we know how the genes operate and how they interact with the stuff coming in and what's best to put in from this interaction, this epigenetic interaction or this nutrigenomic interaction, which is the terms behind it, we can create a platform to make sure that our genes express themselves right, thereby creating better disease resiliency. We can get better fat loss, and we know exactly what to tell people regarding what types of movement they need to do to optimize the function of their dam.
Okay, before I get to talking about how can people get a hold of your
Yeah.
institute, how can they visit it, I have one question. Some guys ask, okay, over 50, you're lifting weights, you look like you still have man boobs. What exercise can you do to stop that?
Usually men that get to the 40s, 50s, they begin to get a little bit andropausal, where their production of androgens go down. Androgens would be like testosterone. So
Mhm.
testosterone goes lower. Everybody, men have a little bit of a natural decline on that. Women, of course, go off the cliff. That's called menopause. A little more sudden, a little more direct and abrupt. And that's why women have such these very robust symptoms that develop from that. Like women get sick post menopause, they lose bone, they gain weight, they lose brain function. Men do the same thing, it's just not so fast. So they begin to put on fat, they begin to put on fat tissue, extra weight, etc. So it is best, I believe, for men that are getting that age to get your hormones tested, find out what you are, seek a professional to help you get optimized in that area so that your body will have the material that it needs to keep building, keep strong, maintain muscle tissue, minimize excess fat as you exercise and change your diet. And that's the best way to make sure you don't have, the moobs, the man boobs as we call them.
But talking to you as not as a doctor right now, as a bodybuilder, what kind of exercise do you do to build here? Not just like I know we do the lifting, we
Yeah.
go incline, but what do you do to build right here?
Well, you
That
want to think of the pectoralis muscle as things begin to sag, as we age. Whether you're
yeah.
a man or woman, things begin to sag, they begin to hang. And that's because collagen structure is a little bit low. So you got to take in collagen. That's one thing. But you want to think about how can I do to lift those things up? So anytime we can build muscle up in these areas above there, it will fill in that gap and it makes it look more full. So the way to do that, of course, is think about an incline bench press, right? Something about a 40-degree bench press or something like that to fill in this gap up here, and that helps a lot. And then further, you want to build your shoulders out a little bit so that you appear more broad and more wide as opposed to being narrow like this.
You mean 40% incline or decline? Incline.
Incline, 40% incline. So this would be the incline. Here's the head, here's the feet, here's the bar about that angle.
So do the bar while you're
Exactly.
inclined. Okay. All right. Now, let's say I don't live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I want to use your services or your institute. What can I do? And
Well,
how?
reach out to us on our website at fmidr.com. We have people that we deal with all around the world. I have many, many people I deal with in California, on the East Coast, West Coast, and even around the world. Through the brilliance of technology, which we're experiencing today, we don't have any problem treating anybody at all. We can get blood work done anywhere. We can get DNA done anywhere. It's not a problem whatsoever.
Oh, you can get DNA done anywhere? Like
You
I
bet.
can go to the Quest lab, get a DNA.
No, we
Uh,
would send you a kit with DNA and let you swab
oh,
yourself with instructions. You just mail it back to us.
and tell me who's my grandpa is, or you can do better than that.
We can probably do a little bit better. We can tell you how your future is going to be. How about that?
That's good. Now you had a best-selling book on Amazon and others. It's called, let's see, the book is called The Quest for Wellness. And
Yeah,
can
we've got
people get
three.
that from your site or?
We've got three bestsellers. There's the Quest for Wellness. There is Fork Your Diet, and there is Surviving the Garden of Eden, which is our newest one. Great title. They're all available on Amazon, but if you want to shoot us a message too via the office, we got plenty on hand. We ship them out here all the time.
That's better. I always encourage people, and don't go to Amazon. Go get it from the author themselves. And
Well, we can at least sign it that way, right?
is some of your services covered by insurance?
I get
Or
that question a lot. We always say that our time is not, because insurance does not reimburse true health care. Insurance is a for-profit business, Nazareth, so we can't expect them to do what they're not paid to do, and we're not paying them to do. That's the fallacy of it. There's no such thing as health care. It doesn't exist. There is sick care because it pays when you're sick. However, when you're dealing with us, we do give people the option to any lab that we do. You can run it through insurance if you want to.
mm,
The lab part. Now, people need to know this. This is what I hope people get. When the lab gets your insurance card, they will bill your insurance company 8 to 10 times more than perhaps the lab is worth. Now, that's interesting because when they do that, they're going to try to charge your insurance company that volume amount. So we always give people the option to put them through insurance, or if you want them at our cost, we make no money off labs. What we pay, you pay for a cash basis. Well, if I'm the only one on now, I'm not sure, but I can't find Nazareth. But either way, I'm grateful for you, Nazareth, allowing me to be on this broadcast today, and hopefully, we provided some insight to those out there and been a help for them. So I look forward to doing this again next time. All right. See you guys later.